For generations, satire and parody have served as a means to speak truth to power. It has poked fun and criticized public figures while at the same time exposing political and social injustice. The First Amendment protects satire and parody as a form of free speech and expression. Its continued protection under the First Amendment remains crucial to preserving the rights of citizens to effectively criticize government and other political officials. For 35 years, The Onion has been one of the nation's top sources of satire and parody. It was founded in 1988. It's become America's most recognizable and prominent source of comedy. The Onion's website has a combined audience of over 30 million monthly unique visitors and accounts for more than 6 million Facebook fans, 11 million followers on X, formerly known as Twitter, and 2.5 million YouTube subscribers. We are joined by Mike Gillis, on my far left there, head writer of The Onion.
Hello.
And Nick Mehendale, who is also a staff writer with The Onion, to the middle here. Mike's been with The Onion for nearly 11 years, getting his start soon out of college as a freelance writer. He became head writer in January of 2018. He's also written for The New Yorker, The Atlantic, McSweeney's Internet Tendency, Tricycle, Clickhole, and the Supreme Court in the form of a recent amicus brief, which we'll discuss later. Nick's been with The Onion for nearly 8 years and began his career there as a fellow. He has contributed to Clickhole. He became a staff writer in January 2018, and he was also a contributing editor at the Texas Travesty, which is the humor publication at the University of Texas. So welcome, Mike and Nick.
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
having us.
So, listen, I've been a fan of The Onion since it was a newspaper, way back. But someone who might not be familiar with it, how would you describe The Onion and its purpose? I'll start with you, Mike.
Sure. The Onion's motto in Latin is "Tu stultus est," which means you are dumb. So our mission every day is to point out how stupid the American populace is repeatedly, in politics, in breaking news, in sports, in science, but also in local day-to-day life. We basically view people like those in the audience as lemmings who don't possess fully functional minds, and we have to kind of regurgitate the news into their mouths like a mama bird.
There you go. Nick, do you want to add to that?
Everybody is scum. No, I'm going. No, we like to just poke fun at every aspect of American life, from the mundane to the big political.
Right. When did you both develop an interest in humor writing? I'll start with you. Back to Nick.
I probably developed an interest in humor writing when I realized I wasn't that good at regular writing.
Okay.
Or anything, really, for that matter.
So, I mean, young. It just, you make enough jokes, and you're like, why not write for it?
Right.
And then inertia.
Yeah.
For me, it was really picking up a copy of The Onion in middle school and reading a Area Man headline about a guy being confounded by a buffet procedure, and I just thought this is so relevant and resonant, and it's exactly what American life really is. It's not profound, it's not terrible, it's just kind of this middling experience that we all have to go through day after day.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're going to show some of the headlines that kind of show some of that, everyday life. But why do you believe humor? I shouldn't say why. I mean, first of all, do you believe humor in the form of parody and satire is important in a functioning democracy like ours?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, like a functioning democracy, definitely. I feel like, I think like actually the less functioning a democracy is, in some ways, the more important it is. Where like in more intense situations, like satire and parody is not just like an expression or like to recontextualize something. It's like literally to get past censors or like censorship. And so, but I do think it's a lot of the time, not in a democracy like ours, I think a lot of the time it is necessary and like a bulwark, but it's also a symptom of a democracy too, like a well-functioning democracy, as much as it is a driver.
It kind of like is an excrescence out of a democracy that's working.
Yeah, it's more of like, you can tell a democracy isn't working if they don't have it.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
I guess I've spent so many years writing satirical headlines, and I spent a lot of those asking myself, what is this headline doing? Is this an effective form of political engagement? And my conclusion is it's really not. It doesn't have a significant effect on the world, or the way it does is so mercurial. It's similar to like a novel or a poem. Like you never really see a end effect of it, except for like Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. The way I think of it more is that being muzzled, not being able to speak your mind freely, is just a net negative. It makes citizens unhappy. Your life is worse if you can't speak your mind. And so the fact that we're just producing this sort of comedic art day after day is not necessarily changing things in a concrete way, but it's just, like Nick said, a kind of outgrowth of having a robust First Amendment.
And I do think changing things in a subtle, personal way is still very important, and can have, like a tsunami is a bunch of little droplets, you know what I mean? So you can, that is all it does make a change, but it's a subtle and a bigger change that's not just one joke, or it's like a sea of a lot of things.
Mike, I'm glad you mentioned the First Amendment, because I'm wondering how often you are thinking about the First Amendment, in your everyday writings and what you can get away with, when you are printing these stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for the longest time I grew up with this sense that people in foreign countries who talk about the First Amendment are freedom of speech in general, are entitled to that, and especially if they're in extremely censorious countries where, maybe they get arrested, maybe they get their studios bulldozed. Those are things that have happened to friends of mine who work abroad in comedy. But I always thought it was a little bit of a grandstanding maneuver for somebody to say, no, me standing on stage and making jokes about airplane food is me exercising my First Amendment rights. Until more recently, I think engaging with the legal side of freedom of speech and also seeing how it affects our writer's room in the day-to-day as head writer, I kind of see that there is this chilling effect if you're fearing either government intervention or some kind of large legal fee that you're going to have to pay for libel or something like that. So it's not something that comes up on a daily or even weekly basis, but when we're publishing a really juicy headline about a political figure, it can be a conversation, especially if it's more incendiary.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, great. No, that's great.
Thanks,
Same.
That's really nice.
I wanted to talk about a typical kind of day. I know there probably aren't typical days at the Onion, but is there a pitch session? Do you meet in the writer's room? I think of Saturday Night Live when they pitch their sketches every week. Yeah. How does it work? How does it go down in terms of stories?
Yeah. So we'll have two different buckets of headlines. There's timely headlines, which are, as you expect, timely, and there's evergreen headlines. So those could run at any time, and they're a lot more of the human experience, slice of life. Also can be political too, but we go headline first. We have a few rounds of vetting the headlines and seeing, does this headline have merit on its own, by its own virtues? Does it have legs to be written out? And then if we do, we discuss it and brainstorm it and then put it out into the world.
I think the only other thing to add there is our philosophy at the Onion is very much quantity to quality. So we're brainstorming something like 1,500 to 2,000 jokes a week, and we only publish about 30 of those. So it's like a 2% hit rate. Right. A lot of stuff gets left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah. Where do you guys find your inspiration in humor writing? What do you like to watch? What do you like to read?
I mean, that's actually what I like about The Onion, because anything can be inspiration for anything. It doesn't matter, walking on stage, it can be big pieces of legislation, it can be abortion, it can be migration, or it could be just I feel weird when I'm alone. Anything can be, anything is fodder, because it's what you're looking for. Experiences, you're always looking to crystallize and distill what people feel about a certain topic, whether it's abortion or just being alone in a room.
Are you okay? You
I'm
feel
actually
weird when you're alone?
No, I'm the most happy, which is why it's really hard for me. And
You brought it up twice.
it's a practice in empathy. I'm so empathetic, and I wow. What is it like to?
You're
be...
imagining what it would be like to be like
Yeah.
John, for example. Or, I mean, just as a random hypothetical, of what it's like to be alone.
My life is so full. Everybody, please know, I'm very happy. Okay. Yeah.
So in terms of what I read, I like to do like a lot of middle of the road stuff, like AP, Washington Post, Reuters, New York Times, and then kind of derail into far afield left wing and right wing stuff, because it's good to have kind of the facts of what's happening and then the different filters and lenses that different media organizations apply.
Mike, I want to talk about the amicus brief you filed in 2022. This was a Supreme Court case in support of Anthony Novak. He had asked the Supreme Court to take up a civil rights lawsuit against the police officers in Parma, Ohio, who arrested and prosecuted him for creating a parody Facebook page of their department. So your brief opens with this: Americans can be put in jail for poking fun at the government. This was a surprise to America's finest news source and an uncomfortable learning experience for its editorial team. So tell us why you got involved with this case and filed this brief.
So we'd never had any kind of legal action on the Onion's part before, but when the Institute for Justice came to us through a friend of a friend, we thought this was just such a symbolic case that everyone should be able to get behind. Essentially, it's a guy who got arrested for making a parody police page that was very clearly a parody police page. And we thought it was something that could be used to have a larger discussion about, say, why freedom of speech is good, why parody law is important. Because it's not just an abstraction when someone is coming into your house, raiding all of your electronics, putting you in jail for 3 days. And I think it also shows that the urge to censor is universal. It's just as universal as the urge to speak your mind. Everybody gets offended. Everybody likes to say that they can take a joke until they are the butt of the joke. And the only difference between, say, somebody making, like if you started making fun of me really hardcore right now, I would want to cut your microphone off because I would be frustrated with you.
I won't do that, I promise.
John, why did you do this? You flew me out to Washington, D.C. just to mock me in front of a crowd of literally millions. And, everyone has that urge. The difference is when a authority figure, somebody with a lot of power, is in a position where they can shut you down. They can punish you. So the police, the Supreme Court, a president, that's when it gets really ugly. And this was a case where the police clearly were just outraged. They were just hurt that somebody would mock them online, and then they took it out on this guy. And I think beyond that, it was a case that revolved around qualified immunity, which is something that can really trample on First Amendment rights if it's abused, which it often is, in my opinion. And so there were just a lot of things that we could touch on with the amicus brief. But beyond that, I think legal writing is one of the most boring forms of writing in human existence. It's just incredible how unenjoyable it is to read any kind of legal filing. And so we thought that there was an opportunity to make a case for parody and why parody is such a powerful rhetorical device that should be protected through a parody amicus brief. So if you read it, it feels like you're reading a real legal brief, and then we pull the rug out from under you and you realize it's actually comedic, but it's making a sincere point at the same time. Right. Yeah.
Do you know the fate of the gentleman that was the case ever getting to the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I mean, he's not in jail anymore, thankfully.
Okay, yeah.
But the case was not taken up by the Supreme Court.
Right.
It's very unlikely that an amicus brief is taken up. Yeah. And so he's just living his day-to-day life again. But the unfortunate thing was the Sixth Circuit just did not think that this was a case where qualified immunity was misused or the First Amendment was trampled on or anything.
And I mentioned that he had a parody Facebook page. I imagine and I know for a fact there's many types of Onion publications out there. My neighborhood outside of DC has It's called the Tacoma Torch, which is a parody newspaper about our little Tacoma.
Take that down, Nick. We're going to have to sue the Tacoma Torch into non-existence.
You're done.
But do you hear of a lot of people that are doing what the Onion's done, and is that flattering or?
Oh yeah, I think it's.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's great. I think it's good for. I mean, it's like a good exercise for people to like look at the world and like try to like recontextualize and engage with it. And I think that because the Onion being such a national thing, there's a lot of like specific experiences that are like unique to certain populations that like we simply can't touch on. And I think it's great that people fill in the gaps.
Well, let's look at some of the headlines. We just have a few to display. Hopefully you can all see them from back there, and you guys, hope you can see them. But we are entering the 2024 election cycle. We're well into it, in fact. So with lots of rich material for you to cover, of course. We'll show you a few recent headlines, starting with Governor DeSantis. Do you see that, everyone?
This was a very important moment for the DeSantis campaign.
Yes.
He finally showed that he could be relatable to one of the most important constituencies in Iowa.
Right. Tell us about your 2024 election plans. What do you have any? Are you just going to be following it along and
I think
doing your thing?
so the Onion received a $200,000 gift certificate from Doug Burgum to vote for him and to write positive coverage about him. And he said we can't talk about this in public forums.
Okay.
So we're just going to continue to do that, and hopefully we'll get even more gift certificates out of it.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, we think a lot about what President Burgum could do and like what interesting directions he could take the country. No, no. I mean, a lot of what we do is it's a lot of responsive content. So it's like nobody knows what the 2024 election will be, including any of the candidates. So we have to be nimble and like respond like as soon as they do something stupid.
Right. I believe this came out. Do you see that, everyone? Is that Joe Biden? This is before he officially did announce you were having fun with him. You have a long history with President Biden. Tell us a little bit about when he was vice president, what his nickname was, and all that.
So, the president.
The headline. Read the headline.
Okay. So this one is Coy Biden appears nude behind folding fan to tease 2024 run.
Yeah.
It's playing with kind of the little courtship dance that candidates do. But when he was vice president, we called him the president of vice, Diamond Joe Biden, and he was known for washing his Trans Am in the White House parking lot, and he had a job installing above-ground pools in the summer.
Screw up with a heart of gold.
Yeah, he was kind of a dirty uncle figure, widely beloved, but also potentially going to hit on one of your cousins at a family event. So we played with that a lot, and it was a lot of fun. We wrote a memoir called The President of Vice, but when he became president, we thought we wanted a more robust kind of character to play with, and so that's
because I think that when you're vice president, you can have fun and do whatever, but like when you're president, like what you do actually matters a lot more, and so you have to hold them to a higher like standard. So it's like you want to have like fun, like crazy situations with him, but you also like actually need to hold his feet to the fire, and so yeah.
And we have another headline about D.C. lobbyists pay senators $5 to fight each other. So this is I think a Democrat hitting a Republican. I believe you are equal opportunity offenders in terms of Democrats and Republicans. How do you kind of balance that do you balance it? Do you think about that? Yeah,
I mean we think about it some. I mean it's just like everybody in Washington is so like full of shit. Can I curse? No. But everybody's so like pathologically like out of it here that it's just like you need somebody to be able to take a step back and be like, all of you are out of your minds. Right. You know what I mean? It's because it's also there's an aspect of some people say the right things, but they don't do the right. And it's like what you say is what you want people to think you are, and what you do is what you actually are. And we focus on what people do, not what they say.
Right.
Yeah, and I think just writing satirical headlines day in, day out for years and years, you realize there's patterns and kind of spirals that politics go through, and those are predicated on universals of hypocrisy and corruption that are really not a one-party problem.
Right. One of the reasons I love The Onion is it's not just political humor, but just kind of everyday life kind of observations. This is, this is an evergreen headline, I guess. New SeaWorld show just elephant drowning for some reason. So, like, how does someone come up with that?
Well, I think it's like, and something like this, it's, again, a lot of what we do is you're trying to, a lot of these issues are very complicated and they make you feel a lot of different ways. And I think we're trying to distill, like, what is the emotional core of any of these stories, right? So you get SeaWorld, you get, like, what was that documentary? Blackfish?
Yeah.
And they, like, the kind of wanton cruelty that, like, seemingly senseless in the way that we treat animals. And so this just, like, yeah, just drown an elephant, who cares? Like, whatever, it's entertainment.
I think it's also, it sometimes speaks to how passive we are in the face of cruelty and the strangeness of the country that we live in. You just kind of see it. This is happening in front of you. You're just like an elephant's drowning, and you're like, okay, I guess I'll move on to the next exhibit.
But passive, but also it's like, we enjoy it. Like, it's like entertainment to us, you know what I mean? The blood sport is all,
Right.
yeah.
And then just another kind of mundane, rock apparently factors into girlfriend shower routine, the story is very funny actually, but like, what's the percentage of like political stuff and also just the mundanity of everyday life?
Yeah.
I don't know if we think about it in like, I mean, there's like a natural sort of both emerge, because I think we all get riled up about political things and like we need certain ways to express it, but we also get riled up and like focused on like the minutia of our day-to-day lives. Right. And so it's just like, it's really just like whatever like moves us to comment on.
Yeah, I think at a higher level, we talk about the mix on the website, which is having some hard-hitting satire, having some absurd twists on politics, having some day-to-day reference humor, and all of that kind of prevents it from leaning too heavily in one direction and just kind of feeling like a tough pill to swallow.
Right. I want to, as we close, I want to display a few headlines that actually made news. Well, you guys have made news a lot, and you wrote a fake editorial penned by Donald Trump that said, everything's going to be okay. I'll be dead in 15 to 20 years. Yeah. So now why I'm displaying this is because you got a response, and you won't be able to see this response, but it was from his special counsel. Tell us how that all went down and how funny that was.
Yeah, so it was about a decade ago, Michael Cohen got in touch with The Onion and said that we should take down our coverage of Donald Trump because it was libelous and that there would be legal action. And we said no, because we're protected by the First Amendment. And so he kept responding and kept threatening. And so we have, 5 or 6 back and forths with him that eventually lead to nothing. And this is also linked to some other similar back and forths. We had one with the Bush White House where they threatened legal action because we were using the presidential seal, which is not how our legal system works. So we just let that fall into nothing. We were very confident that we were protected, and this was just kind of a scare campaign until Michael Cohen was himself in some hot water legally, and then we started posting these emails online along with our agreement to do whatever the legal genius of Michael Cohen wanted, because clearly he understood the legal system much better than us.
It was an interesting thing, I remember, when we did release the emails of like Michael Cohen like going onto Twitter and being like, these are all like fake, like The Onion is like, they're obviously like everything they do is fake. And I was like, oh, these are like, this is like how people just lie all the time. Right. Like, it's like, wow, like we have the emails, we know it's not fake.
Right,
and he's just like, whatever. It's like, they don't know any better, I'll just say it.
Right. Yeah. Another great thing about The Onion is when a story does come out and it's picked up by other sources, usually a lot of time international sources. So this was a story, I think it's up there. Yeah, and the headline, there's a couple of headlines up there, but it's the one that says, Congress threatens to leave D.C. unless new Capitol is built. So, Beijing's largest newspaper ran this as a real story. Yeah. So how does that make you feel when something like that, I know it's maybe before your time, but how does that make you feel?
Yeah, so we're never trying to fool people intentionally. We're not like a clickbait website that our business model isn't driven by deception, but when a large government whose propaganda apparatus is built on deception falls for it, it's actually a nice illustration of just how diluted they've become.
Yeah, and it also like speaks to like incompetency in like these bigger systems that seem impervious, where it's just like you don't even know like this basic article.
Yeah. And I think it's also going back to the motto "Tu stultus est." The idea is jokingly that the American people are dumb, but it is really pointing out the dumbness of lofty institutions that seem very self-important and use aesthetics, like, for example, I don't know, the New York Times having, the only news that's fit to print, having a particular broadsheet layout, or the Supreme Court, having people in strange gowns speaking in Latin. All those things are aesthetics that are protecting them from people realizing, oh, these are just people. These are fallible human beings that are making decisions based on political alignment or based on their whims or whether they had lunch that day. And so Tu stultus est is really pointing out, no, we're all human here. Like, we all deserve to be critiqued.
And then there's one famous one from, I believe, 2012, Kim Jong-un named Sexiest Man Alive by The Onion.
That one's actually true.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Incredibly.
Scientifically verified.
I mean,
but that also got some play in some overseas, correct?
Yeah. His animal magnetism is undeniable, and we can.
No, yeah. I believe the Beijing paper picked up on that one, and it was covered as a real thing, along with a slideshow showing photos of him in all his sexy glory. I think there was a shirtless photo of him as well in there. So again, just an extremely diluted government, and seeing that manifest itself through our work is really cool.
And I think it's also important to say a lot of the times when people do take these things as seriously, it's a lot of the times just for expediency. Like, even if it's like they don't do any research, it's just like, this fits with my narrative, and I don't need to know anymore.
Is that a goal ever to have a story like this kind of go viral? Or you don't think of it.
I would love for people to read our stuff, but I think a lot of the times when things are picked up and they're taken to be true, when they're not like our jokes, it's always like fun, but I think part of us, it's a little disheartening, because if you take our jokes to be real, then in some ways you didn't actually get the joke, and you didn't you didn't take in the underlying truth that we were trying to explain. That said, it does speak to an underlying truth when you do mistake it too. But yeah.
I think I'll just close by saying, I started reading The Onion in the late '80s. It was a paper product, and I pick it up. I don't even know where I got it, but it's obviously expanded so much and changed over the years. Tell us about the evolution and how the Onion Empire, if I can call it that.
Oh yeah, I think we have 7 trillion readers now?
Is that right? Yeah.
Is that a little bit higher than New York Times?
We have a few heads of state installed around every continent.
And Bashar al-Assad's one of our Cub reporters. So we have our fingers in a lot of pies.
But in terms of what is your presence on the web right now?
It's great. We're doing very well. I think we're excited about all of the stupid things that we can parody. The fact that The Onion's brand is very versatile. So we're doing TikToks. We are writing. We're making videos that engage with a lot of different aesthetics. We're embracing all of the strangeness of the 2024 primary, and I just see that continuing into the future.
Yeah, people and politics are never not going to be weird and stupid, and so we will always have things to comment on.
We'll leave it at that. I want to thank Mike Gillis, head writer of The Onion, and Nick Mehendale, staff writer with The Onion. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.